1,500 years ago, a Roman emperor wrote down a single exercise in his journal. Today, astronauts returning from orbit describe almost the same experience in almost the same words. When neuroscientists started measuring what happens in the brain at that moment, anxiety drops within seconds. This is a technique you can do right now, in your chair. It is called the view from above. To see why it works, first understand why the brain inflates any problem to the size of the universe. Sit and try to remember what worried you exactly 1 year ago. Most likely, you can barely pull one or two details from memory. Yet back then it felt enormous. A debt that could never be paid. A conversation after which life would never be the same. This is not a flaw of memory. It is how attention works. Anything close in time and space gets tagged as big. An evolutionary economy. An ancient human had to react to a tiger in the bushes, not to an abstract worry 10 years away. The brain still works by that rule. Any current problem, even a tiny one, feels in this moment larger than it is. Psychology has a name for this: the egocentric shift in perception. We see the world from one point, and that point automatically becomes the center. Our thoughts are louder, our pain closer, our task more important. From a survival standpoint, it makes sense. From the standpoint of anxiety, this is the fuel. 1,500 years ago, during military campaigns, one man wrote notes to himself. Not public texts, but a personal journal that survived by accident. He ruled a vast empire, marched into war against Germanic tribes, lost the people he loved, fell sick. And in those moments he returned again and again to one exercise. He imagined rising high above himself. First he saw his tent, then the entire war camp, then the whole province, then the sea from coast to coast, then the whole earth as a small sphere, then the emptiness in which that sphere hangs. And on this tiny sphere, millions of tiny figures busy with millions of their own affairs. Of all those figures, one was him. One out of millions. Not the center of an empire, not the bearer of a mission, not a ruler, just one among many. It sounds like a way to feel insignificant. In practice, it does the opposite. A modern French philosopher who described this in a book on the Stoic journal called it a flight of the soul over the world. Not humiliation, but a shift in the point of observation. From I am inside my problem to I am watching my problem from above. First from the window, then from a plane, then from the stratosphere, then from space. The higher you go, the smaller not only the problem becomes, but the observer too. The strangest thing about this technique is that it appeared long before the space age. Flying into space was impossible. Yet people guessed that the view from that height changes something. On what basis? On the basis of the same experience astronauts would live through 1,500 years later. When the first crews entered orbit and looked down, many came back changed. They said the same thing. Borders between countries vanish. The atmosphere is as thin as a pencil line. What worried them a week ago suddenly carries no weight. One pilot compared it to having a radio in your head that had been playing your entire life, and then somebody turns it off, and you finally hear silence. This state got a name: the overview effect. In 1987, a book described the phenomenon systematically for the first time. A journalist collected interviews from people who had been to space and found they all described nearly the same thing. A sense of unity, a sense of scale, lowered anxiety, a shift in values. They came home with that experience and went on living differently. A curious detail: the effect does not appear in everyone and not with the same strength. Some feel it instantly, like a strike. Others experience it slowly, ripening over days and weeks in orbit. For some it does not appear at all. So this is not space magic. It is a reaction of the brain that needs two conditions. First, to see something genuinely vast. Second, to let yourself absorb it rather than wall yourself off from the feeling. A similar experience was described in a very different environment. Psychologists studying people who lived for weeks in submarine capsules on the ocean floor found the same shift. These people also see something that exceeds their normal scale. Only it is not stars, but endless dark water. And they return with the same sense of smallness and connection. The phenomenon was named the underview effect. This tells us one thing. It is not about space. It is about meeting a scale that is obviously bigger than you. Scientists began testing whether the same effect could be triggered without leaving the ground. If the essence is the view from above and the awareness of scale, Maybe a good simulation is enough. Several laboratories built virtual reality systems where a person slowly rises from the ground into space and looks at the planet. Participants were hooked to heart rate sensors and brain activity monitors. In one study published in a virtual reality journal, the effect was measurable. Most participants showed reduced stress, a stronger sense of connection with other people, and in some cases a reshuffle of personal priorities. Not in everyone, but in the majority. In a journal of environmental psychology, researchers compared two ways of evoking awe: a space-based virtual reality tour and music. Virtual reality produced a stronger effect. Simply observing the Earth from orbit, even virtually, works more powerfully than the best music. That says a lot about what is actually happening inside the brain. In another study, researchers asked an even simpler question. What if you need no space and no headset? What if you just make a person walk and notice the scale of what they see? That is how all walks were born. A group of older adults was asked, for several weeks, to step outside once a week for 15 minutes with one task: to notice everything that felt big. Trees, clouds, buildings, distant hills. Every day they took a selfie against the backdrop of whatever produced that feeling. Within 2 or 3 weeks, the group showed higher positive mood and lower stress markers. Most striking, across those selfies, they took less and less space in the frame, while the surroundings grew larger. The same effect of smallness as an orbit, achieved in 15 minutes of walking through a familiar neighborhood. Here is what is actually happening. When a person sees something genuinely vast, a starry sky, the ocean from a ship deck, a mountain range from altitude, the Earth from a porthole, the brain enters a particular state. Psychology calls it awe, a blend of wonder, a feeling of smallness, and the need to fit what was seen into your worldview. In a study published in a journal of social psychology, with a sample of more than 2,000 people, researchers showed the stronger the experience of awe, the smaller the eye becomes in its usual self-centered size. They called it the small self. When the eye shrinks, its problems shrink with it. Not objectively, but subjectively. And subjective experience is exactly what we deal with every day. In parallel, another discovery supports the same practice. At a laboratory at the University of Michigan, scientists ran an experiment. Participants were shown unpleasant images and then asked to think about their feelings in 2 different ways. One group spoke about themselves in the first person: I am angry, I am scared, I feel bad. The other in the third person, by name: he is angry, she is scared, he is going through a hard time. Brain activity was recorded with functional MRI and electroencephalography. What they saw surprised the researchers themselves. When participants switched to the third person, activity in the regions responsible for self-rumination and emotional reactivity dropped within the first second after seeing the image. Not after a minute of meditation. Not after therapy. Within 1 second. And no extra activity appeared in the regions tied to deliberate emotion suppression, meaning the person was not burning energy to hold themselves together. The emotion simply faded on its own. This explains why the view from above works so fast. When a person imagines themselves from the outside, especially from far away, the brain stops processing me as the burning, unique, suffering one. It starts processing him, one of many. The emotional amplitude drops almost instantly. Buddhist tradition has very similar techniques. In one Zen practice, a student is told to sit and concentrate on nothing. Just sit. Observe their own mind like a sky, across which clouds pass. Thoughts are clouds. Emotions are clouds. Feelings are clouds. The sky stays the sky. It is not changed by whichever cloud drifts across it. In Tibetan schools, the metaphor is pushed to its limit. The entire sky is your consciousness, and thoughts are merely temporary formations within it. When you look at a problem from that height, it becomes one of many clouds. Intense, but temporary. In one of the oldest Tibetan practices, the student is taken out onto an open plateau, laid on their back, and asked to gaze into the sky. No blinking, no distraction, just hold the gaze on the empty sky. After several minutes, the line between I am looking and the sky I am looking at begins to dissolve. This method was used for centuries in high-altitude monasteries. By the descriptions, the state the practitioner reaches is very close to what astronauts report. Vast space, small I, a sense of being inseparable from the world. It is curious that this metaphor came from an era when no one had ever seen Earth from space. And yet the European Stoic and the Indian monk independently arrived at the same mental strategy. Rise above your usual I and look from there. The strategy converged because every human brain is built the same way, and the same solution works by the same laws. Now, how to do it yourself. No virtual reality headset, no orbital flight, no years of meditation. 30 seconds is enough. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Recall the problem occupying you most right now. Put it into a single sentence, silently, not aloud. Now slowly start to move away. Picture yourself from above as a camera lifts over your head. You see the room. You see the building. You rise higher. You see the neighborhood, the city, the country. You see the country become part of a continent. The continent become part of the globe. The globe become part of the cosmos. And there, in space, where Earth is a blue dot the size of a pea, there is one person with one problem. That person is you. Now say in the third person, by your own name. He is going through this problem right now. Once. And open your eyes. If you do this seriously, not flash through it in 2 seconds. Within 30 seconds your heart rate slows, your breathing softens, and the sense of urgency dissolves. The problem has not gone anywhere. The way of holding it has changed. The strength of this exercise is that it needs no infrastructure. No apps, no subscriptions, no coach, no silence, no cushion, no free hour. 30 seconds and the habit of remembering the technique at the right moment. The best time is when you catch yourself thinking this is the end. I cannot handle it. They are all against me. In those moments, the egocentric shift is at its peak. And that is exactly when the view from above produces its strongest effect. The same principle lives in a simple daily habit. When something throws you off, ask yourself in the third person, how is he doing right now? Not how am I doing? It sounds strange the first couple of times. Then it becomes a tool you reach for automatically. The scientists who studied this effect noticed something else. Switching to the third person takes no more effort than the usual first-person phrase. A cost-free technique that, at the level of the brain, works no worse than a deliberate attention practice. This is one of the rare cases where an ancient practice, modern neuroscience, and a Buddhist tradition point to the same spot. Rise above yourself. See yourself from outside. Shrink the I down to its real size on the scale of the world. And notice how the problem that seemed enormous fits into 30 seconds of attention and a single breath. This channel covers working methods of higher effectiveness, all backed by research. If this topic was useful, there are many more breakdowns here about how the brain works and how to tune it. Subscribe to keep seeing new methods based on data, not on intuition.